Hi guys, Cinematic Recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain an American science fiction movie, called Ad Astra. In the near future, the world is filled with hope and conflict as humanity explores space to find intelligent life beyond Earth. A 52-year-old astronaut, Major Roy McBride, is undergoing a psychologic evaluation before working on the International Space Antenna right above the Earth. He is fully dedicated to his work that his estranged wife, Eve, decides to leave him because he is too obsessed with his profession as an astronaut. Later, as he makes his way to the space antenna, a mysterious power surge has suddenly struck the antenna, causing it to fall and also sending Roy and the many other astronauts hurtling toward Earth. Fortunately, Roy avoids losing consciousness and manages to deploy his parachute. Although his parachute has to be hit by the falling debris, Roy is able to land in a field safely. At his place, Roy hears the news reporting more surges happening all over the Earth. Afterwards, he meets with his superiors at the US Space Command, who inform him that the surges have been traced to the Lima project, created 29 years earlier to search for intelligent life in the galaxy. Apparently, the project was led by Roy's father, astronaut Clifford McBride, who is believed to have died as nothing has been heard from the Lima crew since reaching Neptune 16 years ago. Hearing news that his father may still be alive, Roy agrees to travel to Mars from where he can attempt to establish communication with Clifford, hoping his father will respond. However, he must go on a commercial trip to keep the mission top secret. He then looks at an old recording of his father optimistically finding a new life. He is accompanied by his father's friend and old associate, Colonel Pruitt, in their mission. First, they have to travel to the moon before boarding the ship that will take them to Mars. Roy initially finds no reason why his father had cut off contact from the control center, but from Pruitt's 31 years of experience as a space astronaut, he implies that Clifford may be hiding from them because he believes space expeditions can be used as an escape. Roy, who is acclaimed for his ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, finally shows little emotional reaction to the possibility of his father still being alive. While preparing for his trip to the moon, he has a flash of memory of being in love with Eve. Therefore, he wants to send a personal voice message to her, saying that he never wanted her to leave, but decides against it. Soon, he flies to the moon on a futuristic commercial airline. At that time, the moon has become a boundless territory, where humans fight over mining zones that can lead to war. Upon their arrival, Roy and Pruitt are escorted by US military personnel to the Space Command base, which is located in a disputed war zone on the far side of the moon. On their way with lunar rovers, scavenger pirates suddenly ambush them and kill their escorts. Roy also gets his suit punctured after being grazed by a bullet, but luckily, he is able to close it. He finally manages to fight off some of them and makes it to the base. However, Pruitt says that he cannot go to the Mars and remains behind because he is injured in the fight. Thus, he wants Roy to know the truth about the mission and hands him a drive. As Roy travels to Mars with Cepheus, the drive reveals the status of the Lima project, where it turns out that the Space Command has detected a possible SOS signal from the crew, indicating that Clifford intentionally disabled all communications. In this case, they assume that Clifford may have lost all control when they got to Neptune. Therefore, if Roy fails to contact his father, the Lima project station will have to be destroyed in order to stop the mysterious surges. Shortly after, the Cepheus crew receives a distress signal from a Norwegian biomedical research space station. Captain Tanner insists they must investigate, putting aside Roy's protests that the mission comes first and other ships can respond. When Roy inspects the station with the captain, they learn that the station had been abandoned for a long time. The two then split up to investigate further, and when Roy loses contact with Tanner, he discovers an escaped baboon attacking the captain. Luckily, he is able to kill it after shooting the baboon with a device. Just as Roy is about to help his captain, another baboon attacks him. He then pulls Tanner out and closes the hatch door to suppress the chamber, causing the baboon to explode. After that, Roy seals Tanner's helmet with duct tape and brings him back to the Cepheus. However, Tanner succumbs to his injuries, and the crew ejects his body out into space, but Roy only shows little emotion. As they continue their mission, Roy makes another psychological evaluation, in which he mentions the rage that he saw in the baboons reminds him of the rage he had seen in his father and himself. When the Cepheus attempts to land on Mars, another surge hits the ship, causing the systems to shut down. On top of that, the angle of the rocket gets off from the track, so Roy assumes command and calmly lands the ship after the chief pilot is overcome with fear. They finally arrive at the underground Space Command base, where Roy meets the facility director, Helen Lantos. A secure laser transmission is prepared and Roy is tasked with recording voice messages to send to the Lima Project in the hope that Clifford will respond. After receiving no response from their first message, the crew sends another, in which Roy goes off script with an emotional appeal to his father. Unexpectedly, Clifford responds and a private conversation ensues between the crew. However, they suddenly inform Roy that he will be returning to Earth soon due to his personal connection with Clifford may pose a risk. Roy insists that his father must have answered him, but the Space Command continues to prevent him from hearing the message. After failing his first psychological evaluation, Roy is summarily transferred to a comfort room where Helen comes to talk to him. She then reveals that she was born on Mars and both her parents were members of the Lima Project team. As Roy still does not believe her words, Helen shows him a classified footage revealing that Clifford's team mutinied and attempted to return to Earth, but Clifford could not let that happen, saying that they had to continue their search. Because of this, he was forced to react and killed everyone in the project, including Helen's parents. She then tells Roy that the Cepheus has planned a mission to Neptune to destroy the Lima Project station using a nuclear weapon. In the end, the two decide that Roy should confront Clifford, and Helen helps Roy sneak in. He makes it onto the ship before it takes off. On the other hand, the crew catches him because they detect a malfunction in the airlock. Roy insists that he is not a threat, but the Space Command keeps instructing the crew to neutralize him. They struggle to get him, even a shot has to hit one of the oxygen tanks, causing the air to get poisonous. Hence, the entire crew is unintentionally killed in the ensuing confrontation, leaving Roy to travel to Neptune on his own. Roy informs the control center that he boarded the Cepheus, and also regrets to announce the death of all crew members. He states that he will destroy any remnants of the Lima Project, while turning off all the communications to avoid detection. During the 79-day journey to Neptune, a solitary Roy reflects on his relationship with his father and estranged wife. He experiences many conflicting memories as he struggles with being alone for so long. His mental and physical state also start to deteriorate. Long story short, Roy finally arrives on Neptune and enters the nuclear codes to access the explosives. While approaching the Lima Project station in a shuttle attached to the Cepheus, the shuttle is damaged in a collision with objects in Neptune's rings during another surge and is unable to dock with the station. Thus, Roy enters the station via a spacewalk while the shuttle floats into space without him. When Roy opens the hatch, he finds the crew's dead body floating inside. He then plants the nuclear weapon in the room with the antimatter before encountering his father. Roy states that he is trying to stop the surge, while Clifford explains that the surges are coming from the ship's malfunctioning antimatter power source, which was damaged in the mutiny. He has continued to work on the project, refusing to lose faith in the possibility of intelligent extraterrestrial life. Clifford also admits to his son that he never really cared about his family and does not consider Earth as his home. Despite all that, Roy copies the data gathered by the Lima Project team and persuades his father to accompany him back to Earth. He arms the nuclear payload and then the two climb out on the station's outer hull to return to the Cepheus. However, Clifford suddenly launches them into space using his spacesuit's thrusters while pleading for Roy to untether him. Because of this, Roy reluctantly does so and watches his father drift away into space. He also floats out into space unsure of what is the point to even try anymore, but after thinking about Earth, he decides to return to the station. Roy removes a panel door and uses it as a shield as he propels himself back to the Cepheus. As he shields himself from the asteroid, he remembers downloading his father's data, which had captured details that had never been captured before, but beneath the sublime surfaces, there was nothing, which suggests that humans are the only intelligent life in the galaxy. Instead of focusing the life that was not there, his father overlooked the beauty that was. Not long after, Roy lands roughly at the Cepheus, but luckily, he manages to get hold of an exterior handle. He then informs the Space Command that he made it to the Lima Project station and will detonate the nuclear weapon to eliminate the surges. Meanwhile, the Cepheus does not have enough fuel to return home, so Roy relies on the shock wave from the nuclear explosion in the station to propel the Cepheus. After several years of journey, he finally arrives at the Earth. His shuttle lands safely on a military base and he is recovered by soldiers. The movie ends with Roy expressing his opinions in the final psychological evaluation, in which he optimistically tries to reconnect with his wife. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.